Special edition Oklahoma Sooners live right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stepping by. And many of you may be saying 145 editions. Where are they? Well, we have not been able to deliver them on a regular basis here recently. We hope to do that at some point. We appreciate guys like Parker Thune, him first and foremost in line, KREF Sports, OU Insider on Rivals, and Oklahoma fans. This is actually the correct color code. I know it doesn't look like it, but understand that we did not err in this. I would not associate Oklahoma, of course, in the fine crimson color with red. But look at that. It just doesn't show up well on the backdrop monitor, though. So we'll have to do something about that. But we respect the Oklahoma color code. So just understand that I'm right there with you, folks. Appreciate Parker being here. How's it going today, sir?
Going great. Yeah, Mark, that red really doesn't pop off on the screen as Sooner Crimson, does it? Looks more like I grew up in Nebraska. It looks more like Nebraska Scarlet.
I know, got to do something about it. And I'm even looking at it in person, and it looks like Oklahoma colors like we see on our banner down below. It just obviously doesn't translate very well. So we will work on that, Oklahoma fans, to be sure. Parker, you can catch him, of course, noon to 3 p.m. Central Time on KREF Sports. OU Insider on Rivals. Of course, recruiting is huge. All the official visits and the camps going on here late May going into June now. Parker, what's the latest in regards to any kind of intel that's meaningful and upcoming?
Well, you talking football, you talking recruiting, because those can be two very, very different conversations to a certain extent, even though they are joined at the hip.
Yeah, basically talking about targets out there for 2025, talking about that in particular, anybody showing out at camps that has Oklahoma in the mix.
Yeah, so Oklahoma's team camps, the Brent Venables football camps, actually start this Thursday. So that'll be the first session. I believe they're holding 5 of them. So over the next 2 weeks, there will be a myriad of prospects from all across the country. Obviously, many of them coming from Oklahoma and Texas, but there are guys who will come from as far away as California or Florida to make appearances at these camps. But that'll give Venables and his staff a chance to get eyes on some of the guys that they have offered and some of the players in the 26 and 27 recruiting classes that are offer quality but need the in-person verification. I know as the calendar flips from May to June, the preeminent focus for Oklahoma is going to be official visitors. They're hosting visitors June 7th, June 14th, June 21st, so 3 straight weekends. June 21st, the last official visit weekend of the month for Oklahoma, is going to be the biggest by far. That is what they call every year their Champion Barbecue. So top targets, that's when they try to get all top targets to Oklahoma for their OVs. Obviously, it doesn't work out for everybody. You get some guys that have had to schedule their OVs for the previous week or even this upcoming June 7th weekend or even midweek, depending on their schedules. But official visits kind of take precedence here in the month of June. And looking beyond that, the Sooners are going to host 4-star quarterback Darion Coleman for their, I believe it is their first camp on the 6th that he's going to be in town. He is a heavy Oklahoma lean. Kid's from Orlando, but loves Oklahoma for the development component. It's a good time to be recruiting quarterbacks at the University of Oklahoma, Mark, because if you put yourself in the shoes of a 15, 16-year-old kid, all you've ever known is the highest degree of excellence at the quarterback position when watching Oklahoma football. So a lot of these kids around his age, and Oklahoma's kind of running into it where they're going to have to make some tough decisions as to who they prioritize, who they seriously recruit versus who they slow play in the 2026 class and beyond at quarterback, just because there are so many guys that are clamoring to be a part of Oklahoma's quarterback room because they know it as QBU. And so Darion Coleman is a guy that is expected to wind up in Oklahoma's 2026 class as a foundational piece. Again, 4-star kid, number 4 dual threat quarterback in the country, according to our rankings over at Rivals for the 2026 class. The Sooners hope and to a certain extent expect to have his commitment locked in by the end of the month, and that could come as soon as his camp date.
Taking your QBU mantra there, which is certainly on target, can you think of a time when there was Certainly Jackson Arnold's the guy. There's no question. He is the guy. However, obviously, outside of the bowl game performance, there's not much there. When is the last time that Oklahoma came into a season without a guy that it was like, okay, we know this guy's a star?
Well, here's the thing, Mark. In hindsight, this is going to sound ridiculous, but it was very much that way with Kyler Murray going into the 2018 season. And he had a transcendent campaign, obviously won the Heisman Trophy, but Kyler Murray at that point, most of the nation looked upon Kyler Murray as the guy that couldn't crack it at Texas A&M and went and backed up Baker Mayfield for 2 years at Oklahoma. So by no means was Kyler Murray considered across the board unanimously to be the next great thing at quarterback for Oklahoma. He turned out to be, certainly, but that just underscores a reality that I think goes understated in college football by analysts and pundits when discussing really any team's outlook for the season ahead. Just because you don't know the guys' names, Mark, doesn't mean they're going to be scrubs. And so, sure, replacing a guy like Dylan Gabriel is going to be tough for Oklahoma. And I think people do know Jackson Arnold's name. I think to use an Oklahoma example, everybody is concerned about what the offensive line picture is going to look like after the Sooners lost all 5 starters this offseason to the NFL and to the transfer portal. And again, those concerns are justified. But the other side of that coin is just because you don't know the guys' names doesn't mean, to quote Josh Pate, a good friend and one of the respected voices in the industry, doesn't mean they're going to be trotting potato sacks out there on the offensive line. No, you go play for Bill Bedenbaugh at the University of Oklahoma, you've got skills. So, again, that's not exclusive to Oklahoma. I think that's applicable to every single program across college football, but it cannot be emphasized enough. Just because you don't know who's replacing XYZ departed stud football player does not mean that they're going to fail to live up to the standard.
Do you think that the concerns surrounding line play on both sides of the ball, but specifically you mentioned the offensive line trying to handle the girth and the NFL future players that they'll face, but then also that speed off the edge is overplayed? I see it all over the place in regards to Oklahoma. How are they going to handle SEC line play at this point in the program's development under Brent Venables?
Here's another evergreen statement that is broadly applicable across college football, Mark. Regardless of which team you cover or root for, regardless of your affiliation, it's generally probably never as bad as you think it is, but also never as good as you think it is. So for me, I don't think Oklahoma is going to have rampant struggles blocking the run or protecting Jackson Arnold in the pocket. I think their offensive line play is going to be fine. Is it going to be elite? I don't necessarily have that expectation, but they did make some key additions. Right guard Fabichi Wiwu is how you pronounce his name. If you look at it spelled out, you would never guess that's how you pronounce it. It's Nwaiwu is how you spell his last name. But Fabichi Wiwu was a really good transfer addition from North Texas. Branson Hickman, the center they brought in from SMU, 33 career starts, second team all AAC last year. Jacob Sexton has starting experience at Oklahoma, and I'll tell you right now, that may be Bill Bedenbaugh's next first rounder. He's had 2 of them in back-to-back years, Anton Harrison in 2023, and obviously Tyler Guyton back in April of 2024. Jacob Sexton could be Bill Bedenbaugh's next first-round talent. Jake Taylor right now I would project as the starting right tackle. Oklahoma brought in USC transfer Michael Tarquin, a rising sixth-year senior, as somebody that can be a swing tackle, and he has played guard as well, so there's a lot of versatility there. And Garen Hatchett started at left guard last year for a Washington team that ended up winning the Joe Moore Award. Now, he didn't start all season, had some injury issues, but still, that is by no means a scrub either. And so you look at the offensive line picture for Oklahoma. Is it ideal to be replacing 5 starters? No, never. But Bill Bedenbaugh and this program did an amazing job scouring the transfer portal for available talent and bringing in guys that there will be a degree of confidence in as you prepare for SEC trench fights, because in guys like Hickman and guys like Wee and guys like Hatchet and Tarquin. You have dudes that have been through the fire, and you also have some really exciting up-and-coming young pieces in guys like Sexton and Taylor.
Parker, you made a statement, very profound one, concerning the extremes that the college football fan bases live in on both ends of the spectrum. I'll make a similar statement about offensive line play, that there are few teams across the country, even considering national championship expected contenders for the title, that have set offensive line rotations and know exactly and feel good about every position and where everyone's going to play going into fall camp.
Yeah, I mean that's the truth. And I mean, shoot, Oklahoma has had offensive line play as consistent as anybody in the country throughout the entirety of Bill Bedenbaugh's tenure. And Mark, I've been covering this team for 5-6 years now, and every single fall, there's never a lack of question regarding, okay, who's going to go here? Who's going to go here? What does the permutation look like? There are always things that Oklahoma's figuring out on the offensive line as late as August and even on into the season in September. So developing offensive linemen is a hard thing to do. Evaluating offensive linemen is a hard thing to do. That's why I have immense respect for anybody like Bill Bedenbaugh that can make a living, and a good one, as an offensive line coach, because it is a hard position to coach. But time after time, regardless of what it's looked like, Oklahoma has rolled out a very stable line. And again, the personnel might be shuffled. The lineup in week 1 might not be the same as the lineup in week 13, but the overarching feeling, I think, from the folks that cover this Oklahoma team and to fans that have a sense of rationality about everything, is that you might have the best offensive line coach in the country on staff. He's probably going to figure it out.
And I believe the most important position unit coach, by and large, for most teams across the board, as a general rule. We got Parker Thune here, OU Insider. It's on Rivals. Got to get there. This is the perfect time to do it. May, June, camps going on. So much to track regarding the 2025 class and 2026. You'll see a lot of those offers going out as well. KREF Sports, Monday through Friday. That's noon to 3 Central Time. And so going beyond the offensive line position, of course, there are going to be stories that break during August camp, but much of it's anticipated in regards to what positions you are eyeing. So where are those best battles on both lines of the scrimmage?
It's interesting. It doesn't really feel like there are any huge battles that are percolating at Oklahoma as fall camp draws closer and closer. You know who the quarterback is, right? Jackson Arnold's the guy. You know who your starting running back is, Gavin Sawchuk, who closed the 2023 season with 5 straight 100-plus yard contests. Bauer Sharp, the Southeastern Louisiana transfer, has been wondrous throughout spring practices, has really made a strong impression and solidified himself as the starting tight end heading into the season. The Sooners are very deep at wide receiver, very deep. Purdue transfer Deion Burks absolutely has the potential to be one of the best and most productive wide receivers in all of college football. If he stays healthy and he is getting the share of targets that his skill set deserves and demands, he'll be in the running for the Biletnikoff, Mark. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility whatsoever. Nick Anderson returns, tied for the Big 12 lead in touchdown catches a year ago. Jaden Gibson had plenty of nice moments. Jalil Farouk is a 2-year starter. And there are others. Again, younger guys coming up in this Oklahoma system. Andrell Anthony, let's not forget about him, the Michigan transfer, who was Oklahoma's most productive wide receiver over the first half of the season last year before suffering a season-ending injury against Texas. And you look at some of the younger guys, Jaquays Petaway brings a lot of excitement to the table. Brandon Thompson is a speed merchant. So regardless of what the wide receiver rotation looks like, there are probably 7 or 8 guys that you're going to see at that position on a regular basis for Oklahoma. You flip over to the defensive side of the ball. The addition of Dominic Williams was massive for Oklahoma because that was kind of the one position where the typical OU fan was a little bit uncertain about what it was going to look like. You had a couple of very outstanding true freshman defensive tackles that made plays in spring, and David Stone, the former 5-star recruit, and Jaden Jackson, an IMG Academy product. But even so, it was a question of who are you going to plug in against, or I should say alongside incumbent starter Dejon Terry at defensive tackle. Dominic Williams was one of the most coveted players at any position in the entire spring portal cycle, maybe the most coveted. So he is an instant impact dude, instantly helps solidify Oklahoma on the interior of the trenches. And elsewhere on defense, the Sooners bring back 9 of 11 starters, Mark. So it's not as if there's a lot to figure out defensively. You know what you're rocking with. Your guys are going to be a year older and a year wiser in Brent Venables' system. And there's a ton of depth as well. There are, I'll use cornerback and safety as examples of this. Cornerback, your 2 starters are in all likelihood Gentry Williams and Woody Washington. But you can roll out a guy like Des Malone, a 3-year starter at San Diego State who transferred to Oklahoma in the offseason. Makari Vickers and Jacoby Johnson are really exciting young players. Peyton Bowen's younger brother Eli is only a true freshman, but make no mistake, he may be every bit as good of a football player as his older brother is. And his older brother obviously made quite the impact at Oklahoma last year as a true freshman at safety. And as you transition to safety, it's Peyton Bowen, it's Billy Bowman, who should be in the running for the Thorpe Award. Robert Spears Jennings is probably going to be the 3rd guy in that mix. Rising junior, big body. Obviously, Bowman and Bowen are 2 smaller guys at the safety position. Good hitters. They run well. They're not huge. They're not enforcers by any means. Robert Spears Jennings is that. So in the secondary and really across the entire defense, Danny Stutzman's return at middle linebacker is huge for Oklahoma. But there's so much to be confident in on that side of the ball. It really does feel like this is going to be Brent Venables' best defense during his tenure as head coach at Oklahoma by a long shot. They should be markedly better than they were a season ago.
Parker Thune breaking down OU football for us. Of course, we are just about 5 or 6 weeks away from Big 12 Media Days. And then once that hits, we slide right into August camp and we're off and running. Whether you want to combine the incoming transfers and the true freshmen, however you want to do it, who do you see making an impact? And of course, the true freshmen are in a much different place and category. It's difficult for them to make a splash, but there are those guys that you expect will make an impact this fall.
I think there's enough depth right now on both sides of the ball that with regard to true freshmen in particular, I think it would be, frankly, a surprise if there were any true freshmen that made a seismic impact on Oklahoma football in 2024. And OU recruited really well this past recruiting cycle, right? They signed the number 7 class in the country, headlined by a 5-star, top 5 player nationally in defensive tackle David Stone. For me, it's probably, it starts with 3 names. David Stone and Jaden Jackson, whom I mentioned in the defensive tackle position, they did a lot of good things in spring. And defensive tackle is one of those spots, Mark, where especially in the SEC, you're going to need more than 2 guys. Your starters are Dejon Terry and Dominic Williams. You're going to have to dig into the bench. And you're going to have guys in that group that can give you key snaps in crucial situations and make sure that your horses aren't dog tired by the end of 60 minutes of SEC football. So David Stone and Jaden Jackson immediately jump to mind. I mentioned Eli Bowen as well. To me, those 3 guys are dudes that I can see making an immediate impact on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, freshman running back Taylor Tatum just moved in over the weekend. He did not enroll early, got here in June, as used to be the norm, right? Nowadays, the norm is guys get there in January and go through spring ball. But Taylor Tatum was the number 1 running back in the country in the 2024 class. Big pickup for DeMarco Murray. Again, I don't really sense right now that there's going to be a true freshman on the offensive side of the ball that makes a huge productive dent for Oklahoma. But if you put a gun to my head and say, okay, one of these guys is really going to pop off in fall camp, name him, I would say Taylor Tatum has the potential to rise up the Oklahoma depth chart at running back in a hurry and work into a rotational role right off the bat because he is special.
You know as well as anyone that on the fringe of the recruiting focus, most college football fans, they get lured in by the rankings, of course, who's the number one player at the position, all of that. So David Stone, known by college football fans by and large. You mentioned Jaden Jackson. It's typically that second guy at a position for a particular team. He could be the fourth rated guy in the country at that position, but if the other guy's number one, nobody talks much about him, but it sounds like you're really high on Jaden Jackson, and he could be just 1A to David Stone's, number one spot in future years for OU.
Absolutely. The future at defensive tackle is very bright for the Sooners. And look, in the transfer portal era, you have to always add the asterisk, the caveat that you got to retain the talent, right? But it doesn't seem like the Sooners should have any issue retaining the talent as far as David Stone and Jaden Jackson are concerned. Both of those guys have really embraced everything that's been thrown at them in 5 months now at the University of Oklahoma and have both really made waves to the point where I do expect that you'll see a lot of both of them this fall. Again, I wouldn't say either starts, at least not initially, but I do think you'll see a lot of them. And one of my radio colleagues is a fellow, and this will be a name you know, Mark, a fellow named Teddy Lehman, who won the Butt Kiss Award back in his day and had a nice long NFL career after that as a linebacker. So Teddy knows ball, and he's also around the program constantly, watching practices, just getting a feel for everything that's going on behind closed doors. And I'll put it this way. When a guy like that tells you Jaden Jackson might be the best defensive tackle on the roster at Oklahoma, and this is obviously pre-Dominic Williams, but when a guy like that says, yeah, Jaden Jackson might already be the best defensive tackle on the roster, that's an opinion that you're going to listen to.
Parker, in just the past couple of days, we had the announcement of some kickoff times, and that always gets the juices flowing when you can tie a kickoff time and a network to a particular game. It makes college football feel just a little bit closer. And so we've got a few here in weeks 1 and 2. Temple, not going to get too many people excited. However, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 6 Central, primetime game, ESPN. So that's a good slot on a Friday. How do you feel about the Friday games in this matchup in particular?
Oh, man. It's just, it's weird to me because, I have a weekly rhythm, and generally Friday is my high school football day, right? I'm out watching high school games on Friday nights. I think the only Friday game I've ever covered was the Black Friday game last year where Oklahoma played TCU on 11 a.m. the morning after Thanksgiving. So it'll be a departure from the norm, certainly. Temple's a solid program, but obviously for a school like Oklahoma, I don't think that's anybody. I don't think that's an opponent that they're going to be seriously challenged by, nor should they. So I would think that's a tune-up for Jackson Arnold and that Oklahoma offense in particular, start to give us a sense of how explosive they truly do have the potential to be come the SEC slate. But again, as I try to emphasize every single year, and this is a lesson that OU fans had to learn the hard way in 2022, what happens in non-con play can be a reliable indicator of what type of team you have on your hands, and it might tell you absolutely nothing about what that team's going to look like come the conference slate. Oklahoma went 3-0 to start the Venables era in 2022. They had no trouble whatsoever with UTEP. They took Kent State to the woodshed. They went up to Lincoln and destroyed Nebraska 49-14. That was a team that ended up going 6-7. So Temple, Houston, Tulane, 3 solid non-conference games against programs that aren't pushovers by any means, but nonetheless, 3 games that Oklahoma should win. I think you're really going to have to scrutinize how they play and how they approach those 3 games, though, if you're going to be able to come up with some surefire takeaways as to how they're going to look on September 21st when Tennessee comes to town and beyond in year 1 in the SEC.
Ironically, as you well know, it was strange that Nebraska team was really bad in terms of wins and losses, but took like some of the best teams in the country down to the wire and played like 1-score games every week. Oklahoma was the only team that blew them off the field. It was even more egregious than 35 points, as it was completely no contest at halftime. Houston, what comes to mind there, obviously, the two teams spent one season together in the Big 12, but did not play. But the Derek Ward game against the Baker Mayfield team, in which Houston pulled off an upset of another Big 12 champion Oklahoma team in 2016, if I remember correctly. So that one comes to mind, and that's an SEC network. So Oklahoma, of course, dives into its new conference affiliation there.
Yes, it was indeed 2016. I appreciate the Derek Ward reference. I think you're actually thinking of Greg Ward, who ended up playing
yes.
wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles for
Exactly.
a while there. But yeah, no, Houston, obviously first-year head coach Willie Fritz, who came from Tulane to Houston this past offseason, is a guy that you would expect to be winning at that program before too long. The question is always, how long does it take to kind of refresh a program based on the pieces that you already have there? And so, again, I expect Oklahoma to win that game pretty handily. But that is probably the biggest wild card of the three, where if Oklahoma does get an unexpected challenge in non-con, I would think it's Houston that gives it to them, especially because Willie Fritz is such a dang good football coach.
Yes, so it's Willie Fritz, not Tulane, Willie Fritz, Houston, folks. Of course, he moved from Tulane to Houston, Oklahoma's third opponent coming up in week 3, a team that they struggled with a couple seasons ago. And then the other announcement, of course, is Red River with Texas. Typically a noon Eastern, 11 Central, goes to 3:30. I'm sure it's been at 3:30 in the past, but I always think of this game being the 11 a.m. local time kickoff, ABC or ESPN, depending on where the teams stand and the network's decision at the time.
Yeah, Mark, I don't want to get on a soapbox. I have my thoughts on when this game should be played. Most recently, it was 2017 that this game kicked off at 2:30. I prefer 11 a.m. I know there are a lot of folks that prefer 11 a.m. I know there's also a very vocal faction that detests 11 a.m. So this is really where there's a very clear, very tense split between the 11 a.m. crowd and the never 11 crowd. I'm one of the ones that likes it at 11 a.m. I think it just makes sense. It's right to me for this rivalry to be played at 11 a.m. amidst the constant bustle at Texas State Fair. But I don't want to belabor the point. Obviously, that'll be a hugely significant game for both of those teams and has historically been a game that oftentimes dictates the trajectory of the remainder of the season for both of those programs. So that matters all the more now that you're in the SEC and you don't necessarily have any cream puffs on the other side. Yeah, I guess you got that non-conference matchup in November that every SEC team gets with an FCS opponent. OU gets Maine this year. But that'll be huge. That'll be a huge game for both Oklahoma and Texas, and one that has significant implications in terms of how competitive they're able to be in the SEC conference championship race in year one.
Parker, before we let you go, we will let Oklahoma fans know that over on the main channel, we released a series in which we looked at each conference and we went through all-time program rankings. And this is just not a spitball affair where, we looked at just winning percentage or just one category. We went through winning percentage, bowl wins, major bowl wins. We went through AP poll points through the decades, top 5, top 10 finishes, top 25 finishes, NFL draft selections, first round selections, consensus All-Americans, and more. So what I would like to point out here, Parker, is the disparity between Oklahoma and Texas surprised me. That Oklahoma historically, when you add up the numbers across the board, is decidedly a better program in terms of all-time compilation of numbers than Texas.
Yes, it is, Mark. I probably shouldn't say much more because I'll get accused of being a mouthpiece. But yes, historically speaking, you're 100% correct. There is a large disparity there. And that's why I think there's so much confidence from the Oklahoma side that Brent Venables in this program are going to compete at a high level for a long time in the SEC because they have a coach that's been able to effectively channel and leverage the tradition and the history and the aura surrounding Oklahoma football. And obviously that tradition, that history, that aura takes on a new significance and an entirely new dimension now that they transition to the best college football conference in the country in the SEC.
And again, I've got a pretty good handle on history in this sport. And I knew that there was a gap, but it surprised me that it was as significant as it is. And obviously, it was amplified during this 28-year span together in the Big 12, where Oklahoma won half of the conference championships, completely dominated the conference top to bottom, starting in 1996, even though Nebraska was obviously a major player to begin that run. Parker, appreciate you being here so much. If there's anything that you'd like to pass on to everyone just in regards to what you've got going on, please do so.
Yeah, folks, follow me on Twitter at Parker Thune. There's only one of me, so you'll find me. If you're in the if you're in the Sooner State, you're within the borders of the state of Oklahoma, listen to KREF Sports 99.3 FM, 1400 AM. If you're outside the state and you're a Sooner fan, want to get your fill of daily OU sports content, download the KREF app. You can get live programming there 12 hours a day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then, of course, if you want all the juice on OU recruiting, behind the scenes team intel, all the good stuff that you can't say publicly, but is very accessible behind a paywall to members, as long as said information is kept sensitive by those members. You can head over to ouinsider.com on the Rivals Network. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, official visits are kicking off. We'll have updates, scoop, intel on all of the official visitors this weekend for Oklahoma, as well as the 2 weekends to come, as they look to put the finishing touches on an already very impressive 2025 class that ranks third in the country right now.
Parker, thank you so much for making the time. Know that you've got a ton going on, so we appreciate you always being here.
Not a problem, Mark. Appreciate you.
Parker Thune. Exceptional work, no question about that. OU Insider. All right, we are here at the Voice of College Football. This is the Oklahoma channel. We've got an SEC channel. Please check it out. The link's in the description section below. And yes, Oklahoma fans, as I mentioned off the top, I do know the colors of Oklahoma football. That is the exact color code. It just doesn't translate well on the screen behind us. So my apologies there, but we do know our Oklahoma football and color code of crimson, the Oklahoma Crimson. Want to remind everyone that we've got a full day of college football here on our network of Voice of College Football channel, 7 Eastern tonight. Texas, yes, Troll Texas. Why not? We've got a Texas live show. It's over on the Texas channel. Please check it out. Voice of College Football Texas. You can find it easily. And we've got a Texas show at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Matthew Miller and the guys over on the Texas channel. Please join the show. Trash talk, do whatever you want. You are welcome. Then also at 7 Eastern on the West Virginia channel, we have Trivia Night at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Another trolling opportunity. Trash talking galore. USC Live, Trojan Conquest Live with myself, Matt Zemek, and Tim Prangley from Trojans Wire. Trojan Conquest Live. That's at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Over on the USC channel. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Please like on your way out. Subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. Check out all the other channels and shows, and we will see you next time.